What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Oak Tree Football channel. And today I'm going to be continuing my college football predictions with the Big 12. The Big 12 is about to kick off in only a few days, and I'm excited to make my predictions for this conference, which looks to be a pretty competitive conference for the season. So I'm going to get right into it, starting in alphabetical order with the Baylor Bears. Now, 2 years ago, Baylor shocked everybody, and they were a top 10 team for a large part of the year. And then last year, they were very disappointing, and it was expected that they would take a step back, but the step back that they took was drastic. They finished 2-7, which was second bottom in the conference. Their recruiting class is okay, as you can see right there. Key players, wide receiver R.J. Sneed, that number one receiver, he was solid last year. He needs to be good this year because I don't really think Baylor has that many good offensive weapons. And then defensively, you've also got Jalen Pitre and Christian Morgan, the linebackers and the safeties, respectively. This is not a good Baylor team this year. They're not bringing back too much talent. They have some very difficult games on the schedule. The key games you see, it's going to be against BYU out of conference, and then at Kansas State and against Texas Tech in the final week of the season a week later. They have to win those games if they want to win a bowl game. If they want to make it to a bowl game, excuse me. But I just don't think this Baylor team is good enough. I'm going to say 5-7 for this year. I don't think they're bad, but I think that they just haven't really improved much from last year. And they were very poor last season, so I can't see it being a great season for Baylor this year. Moving on to Iowa State. Iowa State is one of the most exciting teams in the whole conference, and a team that I'm very, very excited to talk about. They are ranked number 6 in my preseason top 25, which is second best in the Big 12. And I'll get to the team that's first, obviously, later on. Not a great recruiting class, 59th in the nation, but they're bringing back 88% of their team from last year, which is 4th in the nation, which is excellent. For the key players, offensively, Brock Purdy, arguably the best quarterback in the Big 12. Probably not, but I think he's up there. Potentially a top 10 quarterback in all of college football. Really solid quarterback. He's got some great receiving targets in Aiden Hutchinson as well, who was kind of a breakout player last season. And then the best player on this Iowa State team, Breece Hall, the running back. Last season was incredible. And he's coming back this year, best running back in all of college football, in my opinion. I think most people would agree with me. He's going to be incredible again this season. Iowa State has such a good passing offense, but they also have such a good rushing offense. Their offense this season is going to be almost impossible to stop. They also have Charlie Kolar, the tight end, coming back. One of the better tight ends in college football. Defensively, I don't think they're as good, but it's still a very solid team defensively. Mike Rose, the linebacker, probably the best player there. I also have him as one of the key players. This Iowa State team is going to be really good this season. I think key games against Iowa. They're out of conference rivals, in-state rivals. At home, I think that's a big game. The game against Texas is going to be a big game as well. But then on November 20th at Oklahoma, potentially the biggest game in all of college football this season. I think it's the second biggest game in all of college football in the regular season this year. Obviously, the championship games will be more important, but that game could play a big part in if a Big 12 team makes the college football playoff, which one will it be? Because it's between Oklahoma and Iowa State, and I do think a Big 12 team will make the college football playoff this season. So that game is going to be so essential to the college football season. But my record prediction for Iowa State this season, it's going to have to be 11-1. I see them losing that game to Oklahoma. I really wanted to say they would win. They beat them in the regular season last year, but they barely lost in the Big 12 championship. And I think that both these teams are pretty similar to where they were a year ago. And I really wanted to give Iowa State the win there, but I'm going to say Oklahoma. But the game that matters most is the championship game, which I'll get to. Moving on to Kansas. The worst team in the Big 12 by far. They are always very bad. 0-8 last season, 0-9 overall, 0-8 in conference. Not even close to being ranked in my preseason top 25. Recruiting class wasn't awful, wasn't great. They're not bringing back that much of the team. Key players, I think there are a few solid players there. Offensively, you've got Velton Gardner, the running back, who I think is actually probably the best player on this team, and Kwame Lassiter, the wide receiver. and then Kenny Logan Jr., the safety. I don't think any of those players are bad, but realistically, this Kansas team overall is nowhere close to as good as anyone else in this conference. Key games at Coastal Carolina against Baylor and at a conference against Duke. It's not going to be a good year for Kansas. 1-11, 0-9 in conference. That really shouldn't surprise anyone. This team is just completely awful, and I can't see them doing anything this season to change how bad they've been for the past few years. Moving on to Kansas State. Now, Kansas State's an interesting one. They were okay last season. Didn't end the season great. Ended 4-5. 4-6 with a 4-5 record in conference. That's an error there at the top. It says 4-5 and 4-6 in conference. It should say 4-6 and 4-5 in conference. Bringing back 72% of the team, which isn't bad. Key players: Skylar Thompson, the quarterback. He's a pretty solid quarterback. Needs to take a step up though. But Deuce Vaughn, the running back, best player on this team. Really solid running back. He's going to be getting a lot of carries this year, and he's going to need to give a lot of production for Kansas State. And then defensively, Jerron McPherson, the safety. Key games out of conference against Stanford, at Texas Tech, and against Baylor. Those are games that they must win to make it to a bowl game. And I do think Kansas State will make it to a bowl game this season, just about. I'm going 6-6, 3-6 in conference, so they're going to have to win their out of conference games, but I do think they can do it this season. Moving on to Oklahoma, the highest ranked team in the Big 12, my preseason top 25, ranked as the number 3 country. A very good recruiting class, 10th in the nation, bringing back 76% of their team, and the key players. And the first guy there, Spencer Rattler, potentially the best quarterback in the country. In my opinion, the second best quarterback in the country, already one of the top quarterback prospects for the upcoming 2022 NFL Draft. Excellent as a passer and as a scrambler. Last season, in his first season as a starter, it was not easy. He started off very poorly. He was not playing well at all. Oklahoma was not playing well at all. But then he started to get better. He got better as the season went on. Oklahoma got better as the season went on. They ended the season as Big 12 champions. They won on a huge win streak, including a bowl game win over Florida in a dominant performance. Spencer Rattler was great at the end of last season. He's going to be great the whole of this season. Oklahoma lost both of their 2 games, I believe, in their first 3 games. It was either their 3 or 4 games last season, and then they won everything else. They went on an incredible win streak to end the year, and they're probably going to go on another big win streak this year. Other key players are going to be running back Kennedy Brooks, really solid running back. Didn't play at all last year, but the year before that, and then the year before that as well, he won over 1,000 rush yards in both of those seasons. So when he's on the field, I think he's a really good running back. And then Nick Bonito, the linebacker, who I think is pretty good. Key games, they got some difficult ones there. At Texas on October 9th, which is going to be an interesting game, to say the least. Against Iowa State, I've already mentioned this one of the most important games, not just in the Big 12, but in all of college football. And then at Oklahoma State, the rivals, a week after the Iowa State game. But my prediction for Oklahoma, despite the tough schedule, is going to be 12-0. I think the only team that realistically could beat them is Iowa State, and like I said, I do have them edging that one out. So, Oklahoma, so much talent overall, a great head coach in Lincoln Riley. They're going to be great this season, and they're going to be contending for that college football playoff like they usually do, even though they weren't really up there last season. Moving on to Oklahoma State. Just about not ranked in my preseason top 25. They're just outside. They were really solid last season, won 8-3 and 6-3 in conference. Quarterback Spencer Sanders is back, and he's losing some of his favorite targets. But I do think he's still a solid quarterback. I don't know how good he is. I think this is going to be a very important season for him. But I do think he is a pretty solid quarterback overall. And then L.D. Brown, the running back. A lot of people are worried about Oklahoma State's run game this season. I'm not worried at all. Obviously, Chuba Hubbard did leave the program for the NFL Draft. But this team, without Chuba Hubbard last season, there were a few games when he didn't play. And the run game for Oklahoma State always looked great. L.D. Brown is going to be the starter. He was really good last season when he got starting time. And I think he's going to be really good this season as the starter. And Oklahoma State have some depth behind him as well. So I'm not at all worried about the run game for Oklahoma State. And then defensively, you've got Colby Harvey-Peel, one of the better safeties in college football and a early top defensive player for the next NFL draft in 2022. So I think this Oklahoma State team is pretty good. Key games at Texas, at Iowa State, and against Oklahoma. Those are all pretty tough games. But I do think Oklahoma State will go 8-4 this season, 5-4 in conference. I like this Oklahoma State team. I don't think they're good enough to be in the top 25, but I think they're up there. I think they're a solid team overall. Moving on to TCU. TCU was a team that was pretty good last season. At the end of last year, they started to win games. Not ranked in my preseason top 25, but they're ranked just outside of it. They're bringing back 79% of the team, which is good. Key players, the first guy there is the most important player to this team, and that's Max Duggan, the quarterback. Max Duggan has to improve. TCU has a very good roster all around, but Max Duggan has not showed he can really be a very good starting quarterback for this program. His first 2 seasons have been on and off. He needs to prove it this year, and I do think he will improve this year, but he needs to improve a lot this season because he needs to prove himself. Otherwise, the TCU team is not going to be great, I think. Zach Evans, the running back, was a 5-star recruit a year ago, TCU's first ever 5-star recruit. He was okay in his freshman season, but I'm expecting big things from him this year. I think he'll get even more carries than he did last year. And then Travius Hodges-Tomlinson, the cornerback. Very, very good cornerback right there. Key games, Texas, West Virginia, and Oklahoma State. Those are games that I think are pretty on par with how talented TCU is overall as a team. My record prediction for TCU is going to be 7-5, which might be a little bit underwhelming, but I don't love their schedule. And I do think this TCU team is really good, and maybe they'll play more like an 8-4 team, but they'll lose one more game. But nevertheless, I think TCU will go to a bowl game this season. I like this team a lot. If Max Duggan can improve, maybe they can be a bit of a sneaky team in this conference and be a little bit better than people think. But I think 7-5 or 8-4 is a good record prediction for TCU this year. Moving on to Texas, one of the biggest teams in all of college football. Not ranked in my preseason top 25, which I know some people are going to disagree with. But right now, at this moment, I do not think Texas is one of the 25 best teams in college football. But I think they're close. They had a very good recruiting class. Returning production, though, 95%. 95 in the country at 61%. That's not good. Starting quarterback Sam Ehlinger, he's gone. They're losing a lot of other talent as well, including offensive lineman Samuel Cosme, who is one of the better offensive linemen in the nation, along with a lot of more players. But for the key players, starting quarterback, it's going to be Hudson Card. I don't know how much I like this. I thought Casey Thompson would be starting quarterback. I think Casey Thompson is better because he was really good in the bowl game last year against Colorado. But Hudson Card must have been good. He's getting the start for a reason at a good program, so I do think he's going to be solid. Like I said, I probably would have started Casey Thompson, but that's not my decision to make. Hudson Card, I bet he's a good quarterback, and we'll see how good he is pretty soon. Bijan Robinson, though, the running back, some people say he's the best running back in college football. I can't get on board with that, but he's certainly up there. In his freshman season last year, he was really good, and he had some big games, and I think he's going to have a big season this year. He's going to improve on what he did last year, which was already really good. Expect big things from him this year. And then they also have DeMarvion Overshaw, the linebacker, Overshone. Very good linebacker. This Texas team looked very solid overall. Key games, week 1, one of the most important games potentially for Texas of the season out of conference against Louisiana. Now, Louisiana, they're first in the nation in returning production. They beat Iowa State, a very good team, by 17 points in week 1 last season. This is going to be a pivotal game for both sides because if Louisiana can win, they can prove themselves as a top contender potentially in all of college football. But if Texas can win, they can show that they can beat top 25 teams and that they are a very solid team this season. That's going to be a very important game, and I'm very excited to see that one. Oklahoma and then Oklahoma State a week later are the other 2 key games in conference. Those are both going to be tough. My record prediction for Texas is going to be 8-4, 6-3 in conference. Texas is always going to be pretty solid, I think. I don't think they're going to be great, but I don't think they're going to be bad. This should be one of the better records in the conference and should get them into a solid bowl game. Moving on now to Texas Tech. 4-6 last season. That was okay. Not ranked in my preseason top 25. Not a good recruiting class. Returning production isn't great, but they did bring in transfer quarterback Tyler Shuck. A very good move for them because I do think Shuck is a pretty good quarterback. I do think he gets a little bit overhyped by some people, but he's still definitely a very good quarterback. And I think with him, this Texas Tech team can maybe be a little bit better than they were last season, which is going to be tough, but maybe. And then other key players are going to be linebacker Eric Ezukanma and Krishan Merriweather, both at the linebacker position. I really like Shock, and I really like that linebacker group, but I don't know if this team has enough power on offense overall. Key games at Kansas, Kansas State, and at Baylor. My record prediction for Texas Tech is going to be that they're going to come up just short of a bowl game at 5-7. I wanted to give them a little bit better than this, but even with Tyler Shuck, I don't know how good they're going to be this season. So Texas Tech could make a bowl game this season, but I'm going to say they're going to fall just short. And moving on to the final team, the West Virginia Mountaineers, a team that were actually pretty good last season, and a team that I expect to make considerable improvement this year and potentially be one of the better teams in the Big 12. They are not ranked in my preseason top 25. They are pretty close, though. An okay recruiting class, but the big thing is that they're bringing back 81% of their team, which is 19th in the nation. Key players, quarterback Jared Dagey. I think he's a solid quarterback. He was pretty good last season. I think he can be pretty good again. He's nothing special, but he's definitely not going to be. He's not going to be bad, I think. Running back, you have Letty Brown, maybe the best player on this team. Has been excellent while he's been on the field over the past few seasons. He's going to be excellent this year, I think. And he's going to get a ton of playing time, and I expect big things from him. And then also safety, Alonzo Ade. Probably the best player this team has defensively coming off a big season, and I expect big things from him again this year. Key games, you see there, Oklahoma State, Texas. But my record prediction for West Virginia this season is going to be 8-4, 6-3 in conference. I like this West Virginia team a lot. I don't think they have the most difficult of schedules. So I think they can be pretty solid this season. And now that I've gone through all the teams, I'm going to go through my full standings for the Big 12 this season. Oklahoma in first at 12-0, and Iowa State right behind them at 11-1. They'll play in the conference championship, which I'll give my prediction for in a second. West Virginia right behind them, 8-4, 6-3 in conference. Texas with the exact same record. Oklahoma State with the same overall record, but a 5-4 conference record. TCU 7-5, 4-5 in conference. Kansas State 6-6, 3-6 in conference, just about good enough to make a bowl game. Baylor and Texas Tech both at 5-7 with 2-7 records in conference, and then Kansas there at the bottom, no surprise, 1-11, 0-9 in conference. My conference championship prediction this season, and it was really tough. It was really tough for me. It's going to be Oklahoma over Iowa State, and I really wanted to say Iowa State because I like this Iowa State team a lot, and I would love to see them in the playoffs, but I just don't think they're good enough. And I don't think they're bad. I think they're right up there in college football. I have them ranked as the 6th best team in college football right now. But I think Oklahoma has a little bit more talent overall. Oklahoma won the championship last year. And I know Iowa State's bringing back a lot, but Oklahoma is bringing back a lot of the key pieces that helped them win that Big 12 title last season. So while both these teams are going to be excellent this season, I have to say it will be Oklahoma, but it will be a great season nonetheless for Iowa State. So that is going to be my Big 12 predictions for this season. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. Please leave your Big 12 predictions in the comment section down below. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you haven't already. SEC predictions will be out tomorrow, even though Tennessee did already play by the time this is out. I will still be making SEC predictions tomorrow right before the season starts. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next video.